Now, the next question is how? How do you generate 1,000% higher quality of life while spending less time, money, and natural resources doing that than one might spend in a traditional culture? And there's a couple of directions to move in here. And so, we'll kind of do a little diagram here and just kind of track it. So one is lowering cost, and this is a big one. So the center will have the ideal. Lowering cost, right? Part of intelligence is the efficiency with which energy is converted into sustainable well-being. In other words, if you can create the same amount of well-being at half the cost, that's twice as intelligent as creating that same amount of well-being sustainably at double or triple the cost, right? So lowering cost is a really important part of the strategy. Now, the biggest single aspect of lowering cost is, one, a place where land is less expensive, where energy consumption is less necessary, right? So Costa Rica, for example, it's warm most of the year, so you don't really need to heat it most of the time. You don't really need to cool it most of the time. So that's much more efficient than having to heat or cool it all of the time. Similarly, you can grow vegetables and food very efficiently in a temperate climate. There's lots of rain, so you don't have to import as much water. So that's part of efficiency. But one of the single biggest drivers in lowering cost is having micro-personal spaces for deep privacy and silence and comfort and sleeping. But a really diverse, shared framework of community, right? Where you share a community garden, you share an extensive kitchen and dining area, and you share a tool library and a book library and activity spaces and game libraries together, right? Because most, like for example, in my lifestyle here in the San Francisco Bay Area, 95% of what I own, whether it's the cars, the art, the hobbies, the tools, the kitchen area, 95% of the space that I control is used less than 10% of the time. I have a bathroom I don't walk into more than a few times a year. The kitchen is vacant, 70 to 90% of the day. The tub gets used 20 minutes a day out of 24 hours, right? 90%, tools get used 5 minutes a month, right? So there's all this stuff that is not used most of the time. So sharing that creates community and also reduces cost. So that's a big part of it. Now, love and belonging, the first step in love and belonging is understanding and seeing one another enough to have empathy. And Dunbar, a sociologist, has done research to find out that basically after 150 people, you start losing track of who they are. You stop seeing them clearly. And so you stop understanding them. Because you don't understand them, you don't empathize with them. And if you don't empathize with someone, you don't attune to them. And if you don't attune with them, there's very little sense of support and love and belonging. And so simply limiting a group to 100 people ensures a very high degree of perception, which leads to a high degree of understanding, which naturally leads to a high degree of empathy, which leads to attunement, successful attunement that leads to love and belonging. And so simply organizing a group and limiting it to 100 people facilitates the environment in which love and belonging is organic, is natural. Now, lowering the cost ties into this because, so this is love and belonging. Lowering the cost allows more time because when you bring the cost down like 90% less than, say, my home in San Francisco, when you delete 90% of the cost, you don't need as much of an income to support that cost. When you don't need as much of an income, you can work fewer hours. And when you work fewer hours, you can pay more attention to your relationship. So the next part of this kind of equation is a very different relationship with time. So typically, someone might work 8 to 10 hours a day and then commute to and from work and then get dressed and prepare for work and work 5 or 6 days a week. Now, when you reduce the cost significantly and you do work that is based in community, you can work 4 hours a day for money doing remote and virtual work, walking to work, to your station. You can spend 4 hours a day of quality personal time, which means you're in better health, you're in better shape. You can spend 4 hours a day with community activities, which is building understanding, empathy, love, and belonging. So you've got personal time, you've got community time, and you've got work time. And we're just up to 12 hours. Right? And then you've got another 4 hours of chores, of personal, social, activities and things that you can spend. In other words, you're creating an abundance of time that deepens the quality of your relationships, which leads to a much higher level of love and belonging. So this is the quality time component, right? Now, when you have quality time with low stress relationships based on high understanding and empathy, when you're walking to work, when you're doing something you believe in, when you are happy, your health increase is significant, right? When there are no gas blowers on the property, no chainsaws that are gas powered, right? When things are quiet and electric, and when your personal space is very serene, you sleep better, you meditate better, you enjoy life more, right? You want to live. Now, another piece of the time quadrant is volunteering, which brings meaning and purpose, right? So, there are only so many niche jobs where people can earn money, but there are many more things that we have talent and passion around that require and are fun to collaborate with, that do not generate money, but do generate sustainable well-being for the population, for the species, for the community, right? And so in that last quadrant of 4 hours a day, we can be of service to something bigger than ourselves in a way that brings meaning. Right? And finally, right, when you have shared resources, For example, I have a pool table, but my wife often doesn't want to play pool. And it's not really set up for the neighbors to come over and play pool, right? I don't know a lot of my neighbors, right? And I have a ping pong table, but it's often dark after work, and so that doesn't get used much, or it's a bit cold, right? But there's other things, right? There's foosball, there's soccer, there's all kinds of other fun games that, would just not get used if I got them all on my own. And the games that I have don't get used 95% of the time. But when you have wonderful activities, right? When you have a sacred space to go and visit, when you've got trails to attend to, when you've got a vegetable garden to go and garden in with other people, when you can cook together and try different recipes, go do yoga together, right? When you can play a whole host of games, when you can explore things together, it's so much more enjoyable. But you also have a wider range of variety and many more people to connect with. And so, these are some of the main themes that result in a higher quality of life at a lower cost. And, as I'm putting these ideas together in a variety of ways, what I'm thinking of is, where do I want to live? Where do I want to spend the rest of my life, right? Because wouldn't it be great? Because another energy reduction is, right now, my favorite times are when I'm traveling overseas to certain beautiful cultures where I spend time. And wouldn't it be wonderful, and another huge cost savings in natural resources, time and money, to have where we live be such an amazing place that when you leave it to go traveling, you think it would be more beautiful. The quality of life would be higher at home.